At dinner, his ring slipped off and I noticed faint scratches inside, like it had been resized. When I asked, he brushed it off. But why would a brand new engagement ring need altering? Whose finger did it once belong to before mine? The ring slipped from his finger and landed against the edge of his plate with a sharp metallic sound. For a moment, the clatter silenced the room and my eyes instinctively followed it. He laughed lightly, brushing it off as clumsy, but when I picked it up to hand it back, I saw them. Tiny scratches etched inside the band, faint but undeniable. My breath caught. A brand new engagement ring should have been flawless, untouched. Yet this one carried marks as if it had been resized, reshaped, altered to fit another hand before mine. I placed it back in his palm, forcing a smile, but my chest tightened. Strange, I said casually. Why would it need adjusting? He shrugged, dismissing it with a careless wave. Jeweler's mistake. Nothing to worry about. His tone was smooth, but his eyes flickered away too quickly. That flicker stayed with me longer than his words. Dinner continued, but I barely tasted the food. My mind replayed the moment, the scratches, his deflection. I remembered the hesitation in his proposal, the way he avoided my gaze when sliding the ring onto my finger. At the time I thought it was nerves, but now those memories pressed against me like puzzle pieces demanding to be assembled. Later that evening, as he poured himself a drink, I studied him quietly. His movements were deliberate, almost rehearsed. He spoke about work deadlines, about a colleague's promotion, but his voice carried a strain I hadn't noticed before. I wondered if I had been blind, too eager to believe in the fairy tale, too willing to ignore the cracks. I tried to convince myself there was an innocent explanation. Perhaps the jeweler had resized it before selling. Perhaps he had asked for a minor adjustment for comfort. Yet the thought gnawed at me relentlessly. Why would he brush it off so quickly? Why avoid my eyes? The next morning I watched him slip the ring back on. His fingers lingered, adjusting it carefully as though it mattered more than he wanted me to believe. I noticed how he guarded it, twisting it slightly when I looked too long. My suspicion grew sharper. I began to observe him more closely. His routines, his excuses, the way he shielded his phone when messages arrived. Every detail felt like evidence. I started keeping mental notes. Times he came home late, moments when his smile didn't reach his eyes, the way he grew defensive over small questions. One evening, as we sat together on the couch, I asked lightly, "Do you ever think about how perfect the ring is? It fits so well." He stiffened, then forced a laugh. Of course. I made sure it would. His words were simple, but his tone carried weight. I tucked the moment away, another entry in the growing list of suspicions. At night, lying beside him, I stared at the ring glinting faintly in the dark. My mind raced with questions. Whose finger had it once belonged to? Was it meant for someone else before me? The thought stung, but it also sharpened me. I realized my life had shifted, even if he didn't know it yet. Small incidents began to stand out. He once left his jacket draped over a chair, and when I picked it up, I found a faint scent of perfume that wasn't mine. Another time he claimed to be stuck in traffic, yet his shirt was wrinkled, his tie loosened, as though he had been somewhere else entirely. I had laughed it off then, but now those details screamed at me. I noticed his sudden mood swings, snapping at trivial things then apologizing too quickly. His laughter felt forced, his affection rehearsed. I began to wonder if the ring was not just a symbol of commitment but a symbol of secrets. One afternoon I caught him staring at the ring himself, his thumb brushing over the scratches inside. His expression was distant, almost regretful. When he noticed me watching, he slipped his hand into his pocket, smiling too brightly. "Just thinking," he said. But I knew better. I started testing him subtly. "Funny how jewelers sometimes make mistakes," I said once, watching his reaction. He stiffened, then nodded quickly. "Yes, they do." His answer was too fast, too rehearsed. Despite the ache in my chest, I felt a strange strength rising in me. I was no longer the woman who dismissed lipstick stains or unexplained absences. I was becoming sharper, someone who saw clearly, someone who would not be fooled again. That night, as he drifted off to sleep, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The ring glinted faintly in the dark, mocking me with its scratches. My thoughts swirled: anger, sadness, disbelief. I felt betrayed, but I also felt something else: resolve. I knew then that the scratches were more than marks on metal. They were marks on trust, on promises, on the life I thought I had. And though he slept peacefully beside me, unaware, I understood that everything had changed. The scratches on the ring had already carved their way into my thoughts, but it was the jeweler's hesitation that sealed my resolve. I walked into the store one afternoon, the same one he had proudly named when he slipped the ring onto my finger. The man behind the counter greeted me warmly, but when I asked about resizing, his smile faltered. He glanced at the ring, then at me, and for a moment his eyes betrayed something: uncertainty, discomfort. Yes, it was adjusted, he said finally, his voice careful. It had to be resized before it was sold. That single sentence confirmed what I had feared. This ring had a history before me. It wasn't crafted for my hand, nor chosen with me in mind. It had belonged elsewhere to someone else, and I was wearing the shadow of another woman's promise. I thanked him politely, hiding the storm inside me, and walked out with my heart pounding. I told no one. Not my closest friend, not my sister, not even the neighbor who always seemed eager for gossip. My silence became my shield. I couldn't bear the thought of pitying eyes or whispered judgments. I wanted the truth first, the whole truth, before I allowed anyone else into the secret I carried. At home, I moved through the rooms with quiet determination. His desk drawer caught my attention one evening while he showered. I opened it carefully, sifting through papers until I found a folded receipt. My breath caught as I read the date. It didn't match our engagement. It was months earlier, long before he had knelt before me with trembling hands. My chest tightened. The ring had been purchased long before I was ever meant to wear it. I slipped the receipt back into place, my fingers steady despite the storm inside. My notebook became my companion, each page filled with notes, dates, and details. I wrote down the jeweler's words, the receipt's date, the way he guarded his phone. Every clue was a thread, and I was weaving them together into a tapestry of betrayal. One evening, as he sat on the couch scrolling through his phone, I noticed the way he tilted the screen away from me. His thumb moved quickly, his eyes darting nervously. I leaned closer, pretending to reach for the remote, and caught a glimpse of a photo. A woman I didn't recognize, smiling, her face lit by candlelight. My stomach twisted. He locked the phone instantly, forcing a laugh. "Work emails," he said. I nodded, hiding my knowledge, but inside I wrote another entry. Photo. Unknown woman. Candlelight. Days passed and I became sharper. I noticed the perfume lingering faintly on his jacket, not mine, not familiar. I noticed the way he avoided my gaze when I asked casual questions. "How was your day?" I'd ask lightly. "Busy," he'd reply too quickly, his smile forced. Each answer deepened my suspicion. One afternoon I followed him. He claimed he had a meeting, but I watched as he drove across town, past the office, past the places he usually mentioned. My pulse quickened when he parked near a cafe. I stayed hidden, watching as he entered. Minutes later, the same woman from the photo appeared, her hair catching the sunlight as she walked inside. My chest tightened, but I refused to cry. "That," I wrote. "That." Same woman. Entered together. I returned home before him, sitting in the quiet living room, the lamp casting shadows across the walls. I opened my notebook and wrote carefully, each word steady despite the ache in my chest. The investigation was no longer just about him. It was about me, about reclaiming the power I had once surrendered. Small incidents added weight to the truth. A hotel key card slipped between papers in his briefcase. A message notification flashing across his phone with a name I didn't recognize. Each discovery was another stone in the foundation of betrayal. One evening I tested him. "Funny how jewelers sometimes make mistakes," I said casually, watching his reaction. He stiffened, then nodded too quickly. "Yes, they do." His answer was rehearsed, his smile strained. I tucked the moment away, another entry in my growing case. Despite the pain, I felt strength rising in me. I was no longer the naive woman who trusted blindly, who laughed off lipstick stains or unexplained absences. I was becoming someone sharper, someone who saw clearly, someone who would not be fooled again. The investigation consumed me, but it also transformed me. I carried the burden alone, but it no longer crushed me. It fueled me. Each clue, each observation, each note in my journal sharpened me. I was building a case not just against him but for myself, for the woman I was becoming, for the strength I was reclaiming. That night, as he drifted off to sleep, I lay awake again, staring at the ceiling. The ring glinted faintly in the dark, mocking me with its scratches. My thoughts swirled: anger, sadness, disbelief. But beneath it all I felt resolve. I knew I was no longer the same woman who had accepted his proposal with blind trust. I was someone else now, someone who would not be deceived again. The notebook lay open on the table, its pages filled with dates, receipts, and the jeweler's words written in my careful hand. The lamp cast a pool of light across the evidence, each paper spread deliberately, waiting for him to see. My heart was steady, my resolve unshakable. Tonight silence would end. I heard his car pull into the driveway, the familiar crunch of tires on gravel. My breath slowed, my body calm, though inside a storm churned. The door opened, his footsteps echoed, and then he appeared in the doorway, loosening his tie, smiling faintly. "You're still up?" he asked, his voice casual, unaware of the trap laid before him. "Yes," I said evenly. "I was waiting." His eyes flicked to the table and the smile vanished. He froze, staring at the receipts, the jeweler's note, the careful pages of my journal. "What is this?" he asked, his tone sharp, defensive. I didn't answer immediately. I let the silence stretch, heavy and suffocating. Finally I said, "It's everything you thought I'd never see." He stepped closer, his face shifting. Shock first, then anger, then something softer, almost pleading. "You don't understand," he began, reaching for the papers. I pulled them back before his hand could touch them. "I understand perfectly," I said, my voice steady. "The ring wasn't meant for me. The receipts, the dates, the jeweler's words, they all tell the same story. You lied." He tried to laugh, but it came out hollow. "It was a family heirloom," he said quickly. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I thought it would be special." I leaned forward, my eyes locked on his. "Family heirlooms don't come with receipts dated months before our engagement. Family heirlooms don't need resizing for someone else's finger." His mouth opened, then closed. He looked down, his hands trembling slightly. "It's not what you think," he whispered. "It's exactly what I think," I replied. My calmness unnerved him more than shouting ever could. I refused to cry, refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing me broken. Instead, I let the weight of my silence crush him. He sank into the chair across from me, his shoulders slumping. "I made mistakes," he said finally, his voice low. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." I stared at him, my heart cold. Mistakes are forgetting an anniversary. Mistakes are being late for dinner. This is betrayal. He buried his face in his hands, muttering excuses. "She needed me. She was going through something. I was just helping." I shook my head slowly. Helping doesn't cost thousands of dollars. Helping doesn't require secrecy. Helping doesn't destroy trust. The silence between us stretched again, thick and suffocating. I could see the panic in his eyes, the realization that his carefully built lies had collapsed. "I can change," he said suddenly, his voice desperate. "I'll stop. I'll fix this. Just give me another chance." I stood, gathering the papers into a neat stack. "No," I said firmly. "You don't get another chance. You had every chance and you chose betrayal." He rose quickly, reaching for me. "Please," he begged, his voice breaking. "Don't leave. We can work through this." I stepped back, my eyes never leaving his. "You don't get to decide anymore." "I do. And I've decided I will no longer play the fool." His face crumpled, anger flashing briefly before fading into defeat. He knew the evidence was undeniable. He knew the power had shifted. I walked to the door, my steps steady. He followed, pleading, but I didn't turn back. "Betrayal has consequences," I said quietly, opening the door. "And this is yours." The night air was cool against my skin as I stepped outside. I felt lighter, stronger, free. My revenge was not loud or violent. It was the quiet strength of walking away with dignity. I didn't slam the door. I didn't shout. I simply left, carrying with me the knowledge that I had seen the truth and chosen freedom. As I walked down the street, the stars above seemed brighter, the air fresher. I thought of the lesson etched into my heart. Secrets always surface and betrayal never wins. I reached the corner and paused, looking back at the house that had once been my home. The light in the living room still glowed, casting shadows against the walls. He stood inside, alone, surrounded by the evidence of his lies. I turned away, my steps firm, my heart strong. The reckoning was complete.